Okay, so now let's solve a problem here. The first problem is of an exponential decay function. Okay, so let us say I have a function which looks like this. F of t is equal to, for t negative values of t it will be 0, and for positive values of t it will be a e to the power minus lambda into t. Okay, where lambda is some constant, so you could immediately recognize this. So this kind of a function, it comes in radioactivity. Okay, so radioactive decay, it follows the similar equation. So let's say I have a exponential decay function, and I want to find out what is the Fourier transform of this exponential decay. So how do I do that? So all I have to do is just apply the definition of the Fourier transform. So what is the definition of the Fourier transform? It is 1 by root over twice pi integration from minus infinity to plus infinity f of t e to the power minus I omega t into t. So this is the definition of the Fourier transform. Now this is f of t, and this f of t, it's a it has got it has got a discontinuity at t equal to 0. For negative values of t, this is going to take 0, and for positive values of t, it is going to be this it is going to take the values of this function. So we could split this integral from minus infinity till 0, and another integral from 0 till infinity. So minus infinity till 0, the function f of t will take the value 0, and from 0 till plus infinity, it will take the value 8 e to the power minus lambda t. So now this is going to anyway evaluate to 0, and then what we'll have is, I take the a outside by root 2, 0 to infinity, e to the power, so we have minus lambda plus I omega into t dt. Now evaluating this is very straightforward, because this will be equal to minus e to the power minus lambda plus I omega into t divided by lambda plus I omega, and then all you have to do is just substitute the limits from 0 to infinity, and when you substitute the limits, you will get the Fourier transform, which is f of omega, which is equal to a by under root twice pi lambda plus I omega. And as you can see here, this is a complex function. The Fourier transform, so that means even though it's a real function, its Fourier transform is complex. So real function may have a complex Fourier transform. So now this, of course, we can split this up into its real and imaginary parts. So all you have to do is just multiply and divide by the conjugate, complex conjugate of this. And when I multiply and divide by the complex conjugate, we'll get the real part, which is a lambda divided by root over twice pi lambda square plus omega square, minus this is the imaginary part, I a omega root over twice pi lambda square plus omega square. So this is the original function. So we take the real part, this is the real part, and this is the imaginary part. So I have just plotted the original function here. This is the original function, and the real part, if I plot, it will look something like this, and the imaginary part, if I plot, it will look something like this. Okay, so we can't really plot one single plot for the Fourier transform, because it has got real and imaginary parts. That's why I have just shown the real part and the imaginary part separately. Okay, the second example is we need to find out the Fourier transform of the Gaussian function. This is the Gaussian function, f of t equals e to the power minus a t square, where a is a positive quantity. So again, we go to the definition of the Fourier transform. The Fourier transform says this: the Fourier transform of a function 1 by root over twice pi integration from minus infinity to plus infinity f of t e to the power minus I omega t into dt. So we just substitute f of t, we just substitute this one. Okay, so we have this, and then we just add up these exponents. So we have e to the power minus a t square minus I omega t into dt. So we just need to do some kind of a manipulation over here. So what we'll do is we'll just complete the square over here. Okay, in the exponent, we'll just need to complete the square. So how we complete the square is minus a t square minus I omega t. So what we do is we add and subtract omega square by 4a. Okay, we add and subtract this, and as a result of this adding and subtracting, this combined, I can take, if I take the a minus a outside, I could write this as t plus I omega by twice a whole square. You can just verify this for yourself. Okay, you just expand this, you will basically get this minus omega square by 4a. So we are basically writing this as a complete square. Okay, so now this quantity that we have here, this quantity, we just call it as s. Okay, we just call it as s. So that means this entire thing is your s square. So as a result, this minus a t square minus I omega t is equal to minus a square minus omega square by 4a. So it means here, this inside this integral, this exponent that we have here, we could just express this exponent as minus a square minus omega square by 4a. So here what is s? S is equal to t plus I omega by twice a. Okay, so s is a complex variable, remember that, okay, because it's got real and imaginary part. So s is equal to t plus I omega by twice a. So from here we can just differentiate this, okay, and if you differentiate, ds is equal to dt. So what we can do is this equation number 1, okay, this equation number 1, it has got an integration from minus infinity to plus infinity. What we can do is we can put some dummy variable, dummy value of this small t. Let's dummy variable, let's call it as capital T. We'll take equidistant capital T's from the origin, and then what we'll do is we'll see what value the integral will take when you make the substitution to the variable s. What value it will take as you take the limit as t tends to infinity. Okay, so here earlier in equation number 1, it was integration from minus infinity to plus infinity. Now we have made a change. Instead of t, we are using a different variable, a complex variable s. Okay, so as a result, we are writing is e to the power minus a square and then e to the power minus omega square by 4a, which comes from this one. And this dt, I'll just replace it with ds. And earlier there was an integration from minus infinity to plus infinity. So instead of that, what we do is we are going to use s. S is this one, and we just take some value capital T. Okay, so because minus from negative side will become minus t plus I omega by twice a, and on the positive side we have t plus I omega by twice a. And then what we'll do, we'll just take the limit of this integral as t tends towards infinity. So we'll just, if I do this, that is equivalent to evaluating this. Okay, so this e to the power minus omega square by 4a, I'll take it outside. So what is left behind is limit as t tends to infinity, this integration e to the power minus a square ds. Okay, let's call this equation number 2. Now just make a small, before we make this substitution for this one to solve this, let us just have a look at the path of integration, because what kind of integration are we doing? We are going from, what is this? This is a complex number and this is another complex number. So we are going from one complex number to another complex number. So what is the path of integration? So like I said, I choose some value t. Okay, so we have minus t and plus t on either side of the origin. And what is this minus t plus I omega by twice a? Minus t plus I omega, so it will have some imaginary part, okay, along the positive imaginary axis. So this will be minus t plus I omega by twice a, and this upper limit will be equal to t plus I omega by twice a. This will be the upper limit. So basically the path of integration will be a straight line which is parallel to the real axis. Okay, so if I take the limit as t tends to infinity, that means this will go towards negative infinity and this will go towards positive infinity. This line, the path of integration, is going to become extremely large. And then what will happen is the contribution due to, if I look at it as a contour integral, okay, the contribution due to this part and the contribution due to this part is going to become negligible. And since this contour, okay, does not contain any singularities, so therefore we could say that this integration as t tends towards infinity, integrating from here to here is the same as integrating from minus t to plus t as the limit t tends towards infinity. Okay, so we could just, as t tends towards infinity in this limit, we could just replace these limits from minus infinity to plus infinity, because these two will not have any contribution in this integral. So limit of, this basically this limit of this integral, we could just replace it as minus infinity to plus infinity e to the power minus a square into ds. Okay, so we just have to evaluate this integral now. Now that is pretty straightforward, because all we need to do is we can use substitution here. So I'll substitute x square, a square, that is this exponent a square, I'll just replace it as x square. So if x square is equal to a square, that means x is equal to s root a, that means ds is equal to x by root a. So therefore this integral, so the limits will be minus infinity to plus infinity, okay, and this a square will get replaced with x square, and this ds will get replaced with dx by 1 by root a. Now this is a familiar integral because this is the integration of the standard error function. Okay, and the standard error function, the integral of this from minus infinity to plus infinity, the value of the standard integral is going to be root over pi. Okay, so this will be simply the result. This integration is going to give us root pi, and there is already a root a, so this result will be root over pi by a. So now all you have to do is just replace this root over pi by a in equation number 2, that is in this equation. Okay, this entire thing will just replace it with root over pi by a. Okay, and this root pi will get cancelled, and finally we'll get the desired Fourier transform of the Gaussian function as 1 by root over twice a e to the power minus omega square by 4a. Now this also is a Gaussian function. Okay, so remember this, the Fourier transform of a Gaussian function will always be another Gaussian function. So now what will be the role of this a? Okay, what is the role of this a in the original Gaussian function as well as this in the Fourier transform? So we can see this here. These are again plots which I have generated using a Python code. So this is the original function and this is the Fourier transform. If I put a equal to 0.05, we'll get the original function to be this. Okay, now Gaussian function has got something called as a variance. Okay, there's a quantity called as variance for a Gaussian function. This variance is inversely proportional to this quantity a. Okay, as we will see. Okay, the variance is inversely proportional. Variance basically gives you the spread, how spread out the function is, that is defined by this quantity called as a variance. Okay, so if this is spread out, that means the variance is more. Okay, and that variance is inversely proportional to a, this quantity a here. So if I have given a to be a very small quantity, 0.05. Okay, since a is very small, that means the variance is going to be large. So as a result, we are going to get a large variance like this. Okay, so when we have a large variance, okay, then in the original function, we find that the Fourier transform, the variance is very small. It is not so spread out. Okay, let's change the values. Okay, I put instead of 0.5, I put 0.8. You can see here it is 0.5. When I increase the value of a, this original function, it becomes narrower. That means its variance decreases. Okay, and the Fourier transform, it becomes wider. Increase this a some more from 0.08, I make it 0.01. This original function, the red plot, the original, it becomes even narrow and this becomes wider. Make it 0.2. It becomes even narrower and this becomes even wider. Make it 0.5. This is a place where you see that the original function and its Fourier transform, they are exactly identical. Okay, when a is 0.5, this function and its Fourier transform, they are exactly identical. Okay, now if I increase this a from 0.5 and make 0.8, this becomes even narrower and this becomes wider. This again, if I increase, this becomes narrow and this becomes wide. This becomes narrower and this becomes wider. Again, a is equal to 2, narrower, and this gets wider. A is equal to 5, this becomes narrow and this becomes wide. So you can see here, when the original function is wide, okay, the upper plot, the original function, when the original function is wide, its Fourier transform is narrow, and when the original function becomes narrow, its Fourier transform becomes wide. Okay, now this result is not at all surprising. It's a very interesting result. It has got applications in quantum mechanics as well, so it's not at all actually surprising. Okay, I'll just show you how this is not surprising. So this is basically how in general, okay, any Gaussian function, this is how you can represent any Gaussian function. So let's say the function g of x is equal to g naught e to the power minus x square by 2 delta x whole square. Okay, so this is how a Gaussian function, it is also known as a bell curve. Okay, this is how a Gaussian function looks like. Okay, on the horizontal axis x and the vertical axis we have g of x. What is this g naught? G naught is the maximum value that the function takes. In this case, it takes the maximum value at x equal to 0. Then what is this delta x? Like I said, this delta x is your variance. That means it gives you how spread it is. Okay, so when you put x equal to delta x, when x is equal to plus delta x or x equal to minus delta x, it does not matter here because you are anyway taking the square of this. So plus delta x, you'll get a delta x square, minus delta x also you'll get a delta x square here, that delta x square will get cancelled, so we'll get e to the power minus 1 by 2, which is 1 by root e. 1 by root e is 0.607. Okay, so when you take x equal to plus or minus delta x, the Gaussian function will get a value of around 61% of its maximum value. Okay, so the variance is defined as that value of x. Okay, the variance is defined as that range of values of x at which the Gaussian function will take a value which is around 61% of its maximum value. Okay, so this is basically your Gaussian function. This is how it looks like. So g naught is the maximum value, and this delta x which appears in the exponent, this delta x, that is going to be give you the spread. So if delta x was large, okay, if delta x was here and minus delta x was here, then you will get a larger spread. Okay, if delta x is smaller, then you will get a smaller spread of this same Gaussian function. Now this was our original Gaussian function, and this is the Fourier transform. Now all you have to do is you just have to compare this with the general form of the Gaussian function to get what is the spread of time and what is the spread of the frequency. Okay, what is delta t and what is delta omega. So what is the spread in t? What is the spread? That is, what is delta t? You just need to compare this with this. Okay, when you compare this, what is the maximum value of the original function? You can just verify here the maximum value. You see, in all the cases the maximum value is always 1, right? It never increases more than 1, it never decreases, right? It's always, the maximum value is always equal to 1. Okay, so the maximum value of this original function is 1. So g naught is 1, and we have e to the power minus a t square. Okay, t is a variable here, x is a variable, so t performs the same function as x here. That means a, okay, then forget about this minus sign. That means a is equal to 1 by 2 into the spread of t. That means a is equal to 1 by 2 into delta t square. Okay, this a is equal to 1 by 2 into delta t whole square. So from here we can get delta t to be equal to 1 by root over twice a. Okay, in the same way we can find out what is the spread in this variable, which is omega. Okay, so compare this again. G naught is the maximum value here. This is going to be the g naught. Okay, the maximum value is 1 by root over twice a, and in this case, of course, the maximum value depends on the value of a. You can see here the maximum value of the Fourier transform does not remain the same everywhere. Okay, so here the maximum value is around 3. When you put this to be equal to 0.05, the maximum value is around 3. When you put a equal to 0.08, the maximum value is around 2.5. Okay, then it becomes between around 2.25. okay, then again becomes around 1.6. okay, and when it is 0.5, this maximum value will be 1. When it becomes 0.8, its maximum value also becomes 0.8. okay, and so on. The maximum value of this is going to change. It depends on this a. Okay, but for a given value of a, okay, this maximum value will depend only on the value of a. Okay, so this is your g naught. Now what is the spread? What is the delta omega? Just compare this exponent with this exponent. Okay, so we have here the variable is omega, here the variable is x, so we have x square here, omega square here. That means whatever else is left, that will just match here. So what is left here? 1 by 4a. 1 by 4a must be equal to 1 by 2 into the spread of the variable. What is the variable? Instead of delta x, we'll just call it as delta omega. So 1 by 4a is equal to 1 by 2 into delta omega square. So from here we can find out this delta omega is equal to root over twice a. And for all values of a, if I just multiply this delta omega and delta t, 1 by root over twice a into root over twice a, that is going to give us a value of 1. That means for any value of a, this product will always be equal to 1. So which means if delta omega increases, then delta t should decrease. That means if the Fourier transform, it becomes spread out, then the original function should become more narrow. If this original function, it starts spreading out, the Fourier transform will start getting narrowed down. Okay, so this is exactly what we see over here. Okay, when this is your delta t and this is your delta omega. When delta t decreases, okay, delta t decreases, delta omega is increasing, because the product, this delta t and this delta omega, the product of these two must always be equal to 1. Okay, now this has got really interesting implications so in quantum mechanics, for example. Now I know that you have not had any course on quantum mechanics, but later on you'll be having, and of course in your school you have studied something as the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So there are quantities which are basically Fourier transforms of each other. So for example, energy and time. Okay, energy and time, they are basically Fourier transforms of each other. So if we have a function, a wave packet which is in the time domain, if you do a Fourier transform, you will get the wave packet in the energy domain or the frequency domain. Then your delta E times delta t will always have will be equal to lambda times a constant which is known as the h cross, and this lambda, the minimum value is 1/2. Okay, so you have delta E delta t will be equal, the minimum value, that is, it must be greater than equal to h cross divided by 2. Okay, the right hand side, it's going to be a constant. So that is basically your Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You could also get a similar relationship for two other pairs of variables which are Fourier related, that is position and momentum. Okay, so delta x delta p, that will also be greater than equal to h cross by 2. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this lecture on Fourier transform. So I've just given you 3 problems for you to solve at home. Okay, the first one is this, the second function. It is basically when t is, modulus of t is less than a and modulus of t is greater than a. That means if I have along the x-axis, along the t-axis, we have one value plus a and minus a. Okay, if the value of t lies between plus a and minus a, this function will take the value of 1, and if it lies beyond all this, it will take the value 0. Okay, so solve this. If we get the Fourier transform, you will be actually surprised to see the result to be a formula that you have already encountered in your optics course, specifically in diffraction. Okay, because you could look at this as a diffraction, a single slit. Okay, and then when you take the Fourier transform, again you will get a diffraction pattern. So here again, the t, when it is less than 1, it takes a value 1/2 epsilon, where epsilon is a real positive constant, and otherwise it is 0, and in this case it becomes 1 minus t square, otherwise it is going to be equal to 0. So please go do these problems in the same approach as we had followed in these 2 problems. So these are the books that I have referred to, and yeah, for I was talking about this Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Here there is a very beautiful discussion on this Heisenberg's uncertainty principle in this book, is Riley, Hobson and Benz. I suggest that you can just go through this. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this lecture on Fourier transform. I will be uploading these slides as well as this assignment in Google Classroom. Please feel free to contact me in case of any queries. So in the next lecture we will discuss we'll discuss some more topics from Fourier transforms. We'll have a look at a very interesting function which is known as a Dirac delta function. So till then, goodbye, take care.